Well, welcome to Father and Son, and welcome to you, Tom.
Morning, Dad.
You had a good birthday yesterday?
I did. I turned 43, which is...
You're obviously catching up on me fast.
I think we're only 12 years between us now, but I had a very nice birthday and got more gifts than I probably deserve. And it was my first birthday as a father, so that was very nice too.
So what did your daughter give you?
She gave me some boxing equipment, because that's my current form of recreation.
Oh, God, the kid's pretty smart. She's not even a year old, she's giving you boxing equipment.
And she drew me a card, which for a 10-month-old baby isn't too bad.
No. All right, we'll cover a few things this morning, but clearly we ought to look at the last week of the state election. Gary did his polls at the weekend. He had Labor 52.5 and the Liberal Coalition 47.5. The Herald Sun came out yesterday on Monday and said 51-49. Ted Bailey's gone into back very, very hard on the law and order with the extra sentencing for murder, for rape and for drugs. It's a pretty tight go. I talked to Gary earlier this morning and he's saying the Greens won't win one seat on his polling.
Well, that's interesting. We know, of course, from a week ago that the state Liberals have decided not to preference the Greens in any seat, and that was seen as a statement of principle. You know, the Greens and the Libs don't agree on a great deal. As a result, the inner Melbourne seats, which the Greens might have hoped to pick up through Liberal preferences, they possibly won't though now. Although, all I would say on that is that, in my view, there's a lot of Liberal-type voters who will do their own preferences, won't necessarily slavishly follow the how-to-vote card, which, by the way, no one has to follow a how-to-vote card. It's just a statement of intent. It's not what you have to do. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Greens pick up a seat like Richmond or maybe Melbourne. I think it's quite possible.
The one that's a real chance is Brunswick, because Cleary's standing, but he's only polling between 7 and 8% of the vote at this point. And he's putting all his preferences to the Greens.
Well, we'll see. I mean, the big interesting thing about the state election is more the themes that are emerging, and it's not really environmental issues. I mean, the two big ones are law and order, and the Liberals have run pretty hard on that. Public transport. The stamp duty on homes has suddenly come out. Now, the state Libs have said they'll have a big cut on stamp duty.
50% cut.
Over 4 years, only for first home buyers.
Yes.
But it will qualify whether you're buying a new house or an established house. And
so that's 750 million the period, whereas the Labor government are only going to do it for new houses in rural areas.
In regional areas.
So they're trying to they've got to be worried about Ballarat, Bendigo and Geelong. So they've focused their policy to try and pick up the votes of people down there and also the builders.
The only thing I'd say about stamp duty cuts, a stamp duty cut for a first home buyer is exactly the same as a grant for a first home buyer. It's just putting cash in their pocket. Will it really have any impact? You know, politically these sorts of things are popular. I don't think they help first home buyers buy houses. You know, the first home buyer can afford a certain amount of money. If you cut the tax, it just increases the amount that they can bid at an auction, at which they'll invariably be competing against other first home buyers who've got exactly the same advantage. I don't think there's any evidence to show that either grants or cuts in stamp duty help first home buyers.
Well, except, you know, it's a blight on the community that you pay, when you buy a house, you know, you pay a stamp duty, then you're paying all your rates. I mean, the taxes have gone up dramatically, and I think it's very, very wrong.
Well, it is, but you've got to say, you know, the community, to the extent anybody can compete for them, and this is all states across Australia, not just Victoria. I mean, but everybody wants more services, you know, more police, more health, more ambulances, better education. No one seems to want to pay for it. I mean, I would happily get rid of all state government taxes. I did some numbers on this and replace it with a higher GST, but here's the rub. The GST, assuming all the revenue went to the states as it currently does, would probably have to go up to around 25% to 10% to cover all state taxes. That isn't going to happen. So, you know, people have got to say, well, we've got to tax something. What's it going to be? I mean, there's gambling, there's property in various ways, there's the GST, you know, we used to tax insurance contracts and things like that. Taxes have to come from somewhere.
They do. All right, well, this time next week we'll be able to talk about the result. They tell me it's very, very close. If you had to be a betting man, the books have got Labor well in front. But, you know, I think it's very difficult to tell. I think there's a lot of unhappiness about public transport and crime. And Ted has done well in the last 10 days. But it's going to be a very, very interesting election.
Well, now, speaking of states, let's just talk quickly about Europe. I mean, I mentioned in my financial report that Ireland is going to take a 70 billion euro, that's 100 billion Australian dollar bailout, and there's plenty of other countries in Europe which have got similar financial problems.
Now, the Greens over there, who are in coalition, they've pulled out of the coalition once this budgetary measures are put in, and there'll be an election now in Ireland at the end of January.
Yeah, look, Ireland and Europe are in serious trouble. They've got all the issues of an ageing population, unpopular governments, massive budget deficits, massive levels of debt. Any proposals to say raise the retirement age, people go out on strike in France. They're the retirement age of 60, they want to go to 62, and people go and set fire to things and overturn cars and stuff. Some people are saying that it would actually pay for a wealthy country like Germany to pull out of the European Union and go back to just being Germany. And you know what? I wouldn't think that's off the cards, to be honest.
No, I think there's a real chance of that, but because essentially what's happening is the stronger countries, France and Germany, are having to find the money, their credit that's being used to bail out Ireland.
And imagine if you're a thrifty German sort of household and you're saying, gee, we save money and we're not in debt. And we're just giving that money to the Irish, the Greeks, the Portuguese,
who spend and don't work.
You might say, well, how does this help us? And the answer is, it doesn't. So, but of course we have the same issue here in Australia. You get West Australia saying, oh, let's
they can't
fall out of the union and whatever. Well, they could if they really wanted. Anyway, it's just an interesting thing to look at. But I mean,
who's going to be after Ireland? Looks like they're saying Portugal could be next.
Spain is another possibility.
Yeah, it's very well.
I mean, unemployment in Ireland is 14%. In Spain, it's 18%. This is the cause of massive social unrest. And no government, it's very hard for governments to impose austerity on people when a huge proportion of the workforce doesn't have jobs, irrespective of whose fault it is.
I agree with that. And fortunately, the Brits have got a royal wedding coming up that's eased the pain a bit. And Britain now is much smarter not going into the EU, don't they, than at the time everybody thought they should. I didn't ever think it would work. Because the problem with a big amalgam like the EU, each country can't manage its currency. It's got no right to implement monetary policy to fix up its problems.
So its interest rates are fixed out of Brussels by the European Central Bank. The currency is issued by someone else. I mean, something the Italians used to do in the old days, whenever things got hard, they just devalued the lira. Exactly. That would stop people travelling overseas, but help the local economy become more competitive. You lose the ability to do that. And Britain stayed out of not out of the union, but out of the currency. Yep. As a result, it has the flexibility to set its own interest rates, to do things to its own currency. Now, I do want to talk about just pokies quickly. Andrew Wilkie, the Tasmanian independent who pledged to support the Gillard government, made quite a veiled threat the other day. He said if he doesn't get the pokey legislation through, and what he wants nationwide is for self-imposed player limits to become compulsory for all pubs, clubs and casinos. So what that says is if you are the sort of person who can't stop yourself with the pokies, somehow, and we don't know how.
How would you control that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you'd have to have some identification system at every venue. I mean, as usual, people propose these policies without thinking them through. But the idea is that you could say, if I spend more than $100 a week, I'm to be barred from any pokies venue. Now, he's not the one that has to say how it will work, but what he is saying to Julia Gillard, if you don't do this, as you promised, I am going to stop supporting your government. And if Wilkie stops supporting the government already has a wafer-thin majority. It suddenly becomes a genuine minority government, and we end up with more instability in Canberra.
Well, and the other one, of course, is the NBN, which I can't understand. This government looks like it's made a policy. It wants to bring legislation in to separate Telstra into two parts, and they haven't even put a business plan on the table and won't put it on the table until after the House ends its year, which means nobody will be able to get up and get stuck into it. Well, now they're going to form another committee to review the social and economic benefits.
How you can propose spending numbers between 26 and $43 billion.
Well, it's 43. It could probably, I'd say 43 and 7.
And not at least allow the full Parliament to look at the plan is beyond me. And you know what? The press and the public are picking up on this. Does the government have something to hide? The answer is probably. The plan will be eventually released, and I think it will make for very interesting reading.
Well, the most important event this week starts on Thursday. It's the first Ashes test at the Gabba. It's going to be a great series of 5 test matches. England ought to be favourites, but the books in Australia have still got Australia a slight favourite. So if you want to make money, I'd back England And then if Australia gets beaten, their odds will go out and you'll be able to back both of them and win.
Well,
Anyway, we'll see you next week, Tom.
Look forward to it.